They say you never truly know a person until you see them walk away with everything you ever owned. I came home from a business trip expecting wine, dinner, and a warm hug from the woman I thought loved me. Instead, I found an empty apartment. No decorations. No appliances. No cash. Not even a damn coffee machine. Just this note. What followed was a spiral of betrayal, theft, and international stalking that took me to the shadowy alleys of Paris. She thought she could disappear. She thought I would give up, too. But she'd forgotten who she'd married. And when I tracked her down with her lover, our money, and a croissant in hand, I didn't just take what belonged to me. I took everything. I burned the bridge, sprinkled salt on the ground, and smiled while she screamed in court. But I'd like to start over. I got back to Chicago on a Thursday evening after 2 grueling weeks in Tokyo. My flight was delayed. My neck was sore from 12 hours in a middle seat, and I smelled like recycled cabin air and bad airport coffee. Still, I was in a decent mood. I'd closed a deal that was 3 months in the making, the kind that keeps the lights on for the whole quarter, and I couldn't wait to surprise Rachel. I'd told her I was coming home Friday. I figured I'd show up a day early, bring her flowers from that place she liked on Wabash, maybe grab some dinner on the way in. She always loved Thai food, so I stopped at our usual place, ordered her favorite green curry and spring rolls. I parked, grabbed my suitcase, and jogged up the stairs to our condo with takeout in one hand and a dumb grin on my face. That smile didn't last. I walked through the front door and froze. The place was quiet. Not peaceful, not cozy. Just wrong. Off. It was like the apartment had been drained of sound and life and color. And it hit me before I even set the food down. Something wasn't right. The living room was empty. Not Rachel cleaned up empty. I mean empty. No TV. No PlayStation. No MacBook. The entire entertainment center was gone. Just a blank patch on the wall where the mount used to be, and dust lines where the speakers had been. I dropped the food on the kitchen counter and started walking through the apartment like a man in a dream. The jewelry box on her dresser was open and gutted. The safe under the bed was empty. Gone were my gold coins, the vintage watches my grandfather left me, a large amount of cash. The drawers were yanked open, half full of hangers and not much else. Our shared closet looked like a department store after Black Friday. Shelves bare, shoes missing, even her winter coat gone. It was the middle of March. Even the goddamn Nespresso machine was gone. Who takes the Nespresso machine? On the kitchen table was a single sheet of paper. No envelope, no signature. Just 4 words in her handwriting. Don't look for me. It's over. At first, I thought maybe I was being pranked. I even called out her name, loud, like maybe she'd pop out from the closet with a laugh. Nothing. I called her cell straight to voicemail. I texted. Blue bubble. Not delivered. I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall. The apartment echoed. Not just with sound, but with questions. What the hell happened? Where did she go? Why? After 10 minutes of sitting there numb, I got up and tried to call her again. Same result. I opened Instagram. Her profile was gone. Facebook? Deleted. I checked her email, no new messages. Her work contact was disabled. I called a couple of our mutual friends. Cassie, her yoga buddy, said she hadn't heard from Rachel in over a week. Tom, her old college roommate, claimed he just assumed we were on a trip together. No one knew anything. Or they were pretending they didn't. I remember walking into the bedroom and opening the nightstand drawer. My side still had my usual junk, charging cable, pocket knife, old receipts. Her drawer? Empty except for a single bobby pin and a crumpled tissue. That's when the panic started to fade and something colder settled in. Not sadness. Not fear. Clarity. She didn't leave in a rush. This wasn't someone running for their life. This was calculated. It was clean. Planned. Thought out. She didn't forget anything. Hell, she even took the backup phone we used for international travel. She meant for me to come home to this. No explanation. No closure. Just a ghost and a gutted apartment. I must have read that note 100 times. Don't look for me. It's over. But I was already looking. The morning after I got back, I woke up stiff from sleeping on the hardwood. My neck hurt. My back was killing me. But it was the quiet that got me the most. The kind of quiet that didn't just mean someone was gone. It meant they weren't coming back. I got up, washed my face in cold water because I didn't feel like waiting for it to warm up, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked like hell. Like a man who'd come home to a robbery where the thief had known his name, his birthday, and the code to his safe. I needed help. Not from a therapist. Not from a friend with wine and kind words. I needed someone who dealt in facts. So I called Tyler. Tyler and I go back almost 30 years. Grew up on the same street in Oak Lawn, played baseball together, got in a few fights side by side. He was the quiet kid who always had his hands in his pockets and knew how to disappear during chaos. After high school, he joined the military and then went into law enforcement. Ended up a detective working robbery and fraud in Chicago PD. I called him and told him everything. He paused for maybe 2 seconds, then said, "Come down to the station." I didn't even question it. I got dressed, grabbed the bare minimum, keys, wallet, phone, and walked out the door. No breakfast. No coffee. Just that low, rolling pressure in my chest like something was pressing down on me from the inside. Tyler met me in the back lot behind the precinct. We went inside. No formal report. No questions about feelings or what I thought happened. Just facts. I told him about the missing stuff, the note, her deleted social media, the phones that wouldn't connect. I didn't have to fake anything. I was just drained. My words were flat, but he listened like it was a homicide. When I finished, he said, "Give me an hour." We were lucky. Our building had an upgraded security system, and Tyler had enough pull to access external camera feeds with minimal paperwork. I sat on a metal chair in a break room that smelled like burnt coffee and microwaved noodles while he worked. In about a couple hours, it was ready. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Date stamped. 2 days before I came back. Afternoon. 3:17 p.m. There she was. Rachel. She came out of our building wearing sunglasses and that beige trench coat she only wore when she wanted to look expensive. One hand clutching her big tote bag, the other pulling a massive roller suitcase. 2 more bags followed, stacked on top of each other, strapped together like she was heading out for a long vacation, not a quick trip across town. She didn't look nervous. Didn't look back. Just walked fast, straight toward the curb. A cab pulled up. She opened the door, threw in the bags, and slid inside. Tyler paused the video. "You see that?" He rewound a few seconds and froze the frame. A guy stepped out of the passenger side to help load the bags into the trunk. Shorter than me, dark hoodie, ball cap pulled low. Couldn't see his face. He didn't go inside, didn't stick around. Just helped load the luggage and got back in. Tyler zoomed in on the cab's rear plate. "Got it," he said. Tyler had pulled the plate from the cab Rachel took, and through his system, he traced it to a guy named Marcus Guzman, mid-40s, part-time cab driver out. Tyler said the guy was clean. No flags, no priors, no outstanding complaints. Just another guy trying to get by in the city. We called Marcus in. Tyler didn't mention any legal pressure, just told the dispatcher we wanted a few words about a client pickup from my address. Marcus agreed without hesitation and showed up later that afternoon. He was a short man, stocky, with a graying beard and thick glasses that slid down his nose when he talked. He looked like someone's friendly uncle, not a guy who unknowingly drove my whole life out of the city. Tyler introduced us, then sat back and let me do most of the talking. "Remember you gave a woman a ride a few days ago from the address?" I asked. Marcus thought for a second. "Tall, dark hair, 3 bags?" I nodded. "Yeah, I remember. She flagged the ride through the app, said she needed to go to O'Hare." "Was she alone?" He paused, glanced at Tyler, then looked back at me. "She wasn't. There was a guy with her. He came out a minute before her, helped put the bags in. Sat in the front seat. She was in the back, quiet the whole time." "What did he look like?" Marcus scratched the back of his head. "White guy, late 30s maybe. Beard. Hat pulled low. Seemed real familiar with her, though they didn't talk much once we got moving." "Did you hear them say anything about where they were going?" He shook his head. "Not really. The guy asked me to take the scenic route to the airport, said they weren't in a hurry." Tyler handed Marcus a release form, which he signed without issue, and then pulled up his ride logs for that day. The pickup was timestamped at 3:17 p.m. The drop-off at O'Hare was logged at 4:05. Credit card payment. Name on the receipt, Rachel K. I stared at the printout. That was her card. Still active. Still tied to our shared bank account, though not for long. I made a mental note to freeze anything I hadn't already. Tyler typed something into his terminal and leaned back in his chair. "Let me run TSA flight records from O'Hare that day," he said. We waited a few minutes while the system combed through the logs. Then he turned the monitor toward me. There it was. Rachel K., flight number 862, Air France. One-way ticket to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Purchased 3 days before the trip. Paid in full. No return date. Next to her name, passenger 2, Evan G. I didn't recognize the name right away, but something about it itched at the back of my mind. Then it hit me. Evan Granger. I'd met him once, maybe twice. A barbecue, years ago. Rachel had introduced him as an old friend from middle school, someone she reconnected with online. Said he was harmless. Said he was married, lived out of state, and had a kid. I hadn't thought twice about him since. Until now. I sat back in my chair and felt something settle in my chest. Not like the cold shock from before. Not even the anger. This was heavier. Like concrete. A realization that it wasn't random. It wasn't desperation. It was planned. They'd bought the tickets days in advance. That means she was already gone before I even boarded my return flight from Tokyo. While I was in meetings and hotel lobbies, she was emptying our apartment, selling off jewelry, converting cash, printing boarding passes. I looked at Tyler. What do you think? He didn't say anything at first. Just clicked around, brought up Evan's info, last known address, old job in Minneapolis, a couple of traffic tickets, no criminal record. And then finally, I think she made sure you wouldn't see it coming. I nodded. My throat was dry again. Felt like I'd swallowed gravel. Want me to run anything else? He asked. Not yet, I said. Let's sit with this for a bit. He didn't press. He never did. When I got home, I took the food containers I'd bought for Rachel, now sitting 2 days old in the fridge, and tossed them in the trash. I poured the green curry into the sink, watched it swirl and disappear. She didn't just leave. She vanished. With help. With planning. With purpose. And now I had a name. And a destination. She really did it. She took everything and ran to Paris with a guy I barely remembered meeting. I could have stayed in that parking lot all night, but that's not who I am. My father always said when the house is burning, don't yell about the fire, grab a hose, or get out of the way. So I went home and grabbed a hose. I opened my laptop and started looking through everything: joint bank accounts, savings, investments, insurance policies. It turned out that some of the accounts she had access to had been emptied, but the main accounts were still there. Even here, I lost a little money, not much, but still that I moved whatever I could into a separate personal account, flagged every shared card, and started shutting down access. I filed fraud alerts, password changes, canceled subscriptions, you name it. I wasn't just mad. I was surgical. The only reason I still had anything left was because about a year ago, I started moving a chunk of my paycheck into a private account. It wasn't because I didn't trust her back then. It was more of a long-term security move, something I'd read about in a finance blog. Thank God for that little voice in the back of my head. Between that and what I salvaged from our shared accounts, I had enough to act fast. No hesitation, no red tape. I contacted my attorney, Marlon Weaver. I'd known him since my first business deal in the city. Straightforward guy. Big voice. No patience for drama. I told him what had happened and sent him copies of the photos, the cab license plate, the boarding info, and the TSA logs Tyler pulled. He didn't even pause. I'll start the paperwork. File fraud, theft, and property abandonment. You go do what you need to do. The next morning, I was on the phone with the airline. Got myself a one-way flight to Paris on the next available seat. Business class. I wasn't going to chase my runaway wife in the back row next to the toilets. I packed light. 2 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, a jacket, and a folder full of documentation, bank statements, the cab photo, a printed image of the note she left, and copies of our marriage certificate and property inventory. Tyler decided to fly with me. Said you'd need backup or backup. Took a week off work, and we went. I didn't tell anyone except Tyler and Marlon. Not my coworkers. Not my mother. I didn't need pity or questions. I needed closure. Justice, maybe. Call it what you want. I had to see her face. I had to look her in the eye and take back whatever part of me she hadn't already tried to destroy. The flight was long. 10 hours in the air gives you time to think. Too much, maybe. We landed early in the morning, Paris time. I didn't stop to take in the sights or breathe in the air. I didn't care about the Eiffel Tower or cafes or cobblestone streets. I was there for one reason. First thing I did was find a translator. Her name was Camille. She worked freelance with tourists and legal offices. Young woman, late 20s maybe, spoke perfect English with that calm, clipped French delivery that made everything sound twice as serious. I showed her the documents, explained what happened, and asked if she'd come with me to the police station. We caught a cab to the main police prefecture. The driver didn't speak English, but Camille handled everything like she'd done it 1,000 times. She kept glancing over at me during the ride, probably trying to gauge what kind of man flies across the world with a binder full of documents and a look like he'd just dug himself out of a grave. I didn't give her much. I didn't feel like talking. When we got to the station, it was as busy as you'd expect. People lined up in every direction, officers walking back and forth, the smell of old wood and copier toner in the air. Camille led the way through security, and after explaining our purpose to the front desk, we were told to wait. It took about an hour before someone called us back. The officer was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a stiff jaw. He wore his badge like it weighed 10 pounds and looked like someone who had stopped believing in small talk years ago. He spoke only French, so Camille did the talking. I handed over everything. The theft report I'd filed back home, translated into French by Camille's contact the night before, copies of Rachel's passport, the airline confirmation, the cab records, the photos from the building's security camera, a printed image of her note, and a full inventory of the items she'd taken. I had receipts for most of it. The rest was backed up by insurance claims. Camille organized everything into a folder, clipped it all neatly, and laid it on the officer's desk like she was setting down blueprints. The man leafed through it all, occasionally grunting or asking short questions in French. Camille answered calmly, never hesitating. I watched his eyes as he scanned through the photos. The one of Rachel getting into the cab with the bags seemed to interest him the most. He held it up, squinted at it, then passed it back. Then Camille opened her purse and pulled out a plain white envelope. It wasn't flashy or obvious, just thick. She slid it across the desk. The officer didn't even blink, just took it, opened the drawer, and tucked it away without looking inside. Then he leaned over and whispered something to Camille in a tone too low for me to catch. She nodded, took out her notepad, and wrote something down. The meeting ended 15 minutes later. We shook hands, and he promised, through Camille, to look into it and contact us if anything develops. Which I knew was code for, you'll hear from us if it's worth our time. Back outside, Camille and I walked to a nearby cafe to warm up. It was gray out, spitting a little rain. The wind cut through my jacket like I'd left the zipper open. We sat at a table under an awning, and she ordered coffee for both of us. I stared out into the street, watching people hurry past with umbrellas and plastic-wrapped bouquets. She finally spoke up. He gave me something, she said. I turned to her. What kind of something? She pulled out the slip of paper. On it was a name, an address, a phone number, rental property. Not in her name, of course. Rented last week under a variation, different last name. But they linked it to the man you mentioned. Evan. I looked at the paper. The address meant nothing to me, but I recognized the number format. French landline. It's in the outskirts, she continued. Low traffic area. Not touristy. Mostly locals. He said it's a private rental, not a hotel. Quiet neighborhood. That's all he could give. I folded the paper and tucked it into my wallet. It wasn't much, but it was something. We finished our coffee, and I paid. Back at the hotel, I sat at the little desk and stared at the file. It looked so official now. Pages and forms, pictures and timestamps. All laid out like a case I never asked to build. Tyler has been waiting for me at the hotel all this time. He asked how things were at the police station, and I told him everything. I didn't come to Paris for revenge. I didn't come to chase after someone who didn't want to be found. I came because I needed to know she really did it. That she'd made the choice. That it wasn't a mistake or some misunderstanding. Now I had an address. Now I had the truth. And soon, I'd have my answer. We waited until dusk to head out toward the address. The neighborhood was quiet. Older buildings, worn shutters, a few corner shops with flickering signs and cracked tile. It wasn't the kind of place tourists went to. It was where people lived quietly and didn't ask questions. The kind of place where you could disappear without much effort. The building itself was gray and plain. 3 stories, no elevator, intercom buzzer by the main door. The exterior was a little chipped, like it hadn't seen fresh paint in 10 years. Tyler and I didn't have to wait long. A little after 7, I saw them. They came around the corner walking side by side. She was carrying a brown paper bag, the top folded over like something out of a grocery store commercial. A baguette stuck out the top like a cliché. He had a bottle of wine under his arm and his other hand on her waist. They were laughing. Laughing. She was wearing that olive green coat I bought her 2 Christmases ago. I stared at her walking in that coat beside him, her head tipped back as she laughed at whatever joke he'd just told. He looked different than I remembered. A bit more scruff on his jaw, hair a little thinner, but the same smug lean in his walk. He didn't have the look of someone hiding. He looked comfortable. They stopped at the door, and she unlocked it. 10 minutes after they disappeared inside, I spotted a man smoking near a bike rack. He was maybe 20, wearing a hoodie and headphones looped around his neck. Local, probably a student. I walked over and offered him 50 euros. The translator on my phone helped me connect with him. I told him I needed a favor. Said he should knock on the third-floor door and say he was the landlady's son, checking on a gas meter complaint. Nothing more. Just knock, get the door open, say the line, and walk away. He looked confused, but money speaks. He nodded and headed in. We climbed the stairs quietly, 2 steps at a time. The hallway smelled like paint thinner and warm bread. The kid knocked. He waited. The door opened. Rachel stood in the doorway. Same hair, same face, but different. Lighter somehow. Like she'd shed the life she had with me like an old coat. She looked shocked, not at the kid, but behind him at me. Her lips parted. I rushed the door. The kid stepped aside so fast he almost tripped. I pushed past Rachel before she could say anything. Inside, it smelled like wine and fabric softener. A record played softly in the background, some French jazz thing. There were candles lit on the table. The same table that had my money, my things, my stolen life scattered across it. Tyler closed the door behind us and leaned against it, arms crossed. Rachel backed up until she hit the wall near the window. Chris, what are you doing? I didn't answer. I scanned the room. A couch, a cheap bookshelf, a couple of framed art prints like you'd buy at a flea market. Nothing fancy, but enough to make it feel like a place people weren't just staying in, they were living in it. Then Evan appeared from the hallway. He froze. Whoa, what the hell? He was holding a plate, something half-eaten on it. He looked like he'd just come from the shower. Barefoot, mouth open, moving slow like he couldn't decide whether to run or speak. I didn't care. I'd seen enough. I walked farther inside. The air was thick and warm. My fists were tight, but I didn't swing. I didn't yell. I just stood there, staring at the two of them, waiting for one of them to make a sound worth responding to. Rachel swallowed hard. Her voice shook when she said, "You can't be here." But she was wrong. I was exactly where I needed to be. Rachel screamed like she had seen a ghost. I guess in some ways, I was exactly that, something from a past she'd buried fast and deep. Her eyes widened, and she stumbled back, nearly knocking over a floor lamp beside the couch. Her hand covered her mouth like she wanted to shove the scream back in. Evan dropped the plate he was holding. It hit the floor with a hollow crack, the food splattering across the tiles. He didn't even look down at the mess. He darted through the living room and vanished into the kitchen like a squirrel that just heard a chainsaw. Rachel backed herself up against the wall, hands trembling, lips moving but saying nothing. When she finally found words, they came out in a choked whisper. "Please. Chris, don't do anything stupid." I didn't say a word. I wasn't here for yelling. I wasn't here to beg or cry. I was here to finish something. She stumbled toward the bedroom, still wrapped in that olive green coat, and collapsed on the edge of the bed like her legs gave out underneath her. She curled up, knees to chest, and stared at me with a look that landed somewhere between panic and guilt. "Don't hurt me," she said, voice shaking. "Please. Please don't." I didn't raise a hand. I didn't even raise my voice. I turned away from her and began searching the apartment. First stop was the closet in the bedroom. A basic wardrobe. A couple of suitcases tucked under the shelf. I opened the first one, clothes. Opened the second. That's when I saw it. A dark gray backpack. I recognized it instantly. It was mine. One I used years ago on business trips. I pulled it out, unzipped it slowly, and stared inside. There they were. My gold chains. The ones I kept locked away in the safe under our bed back home. My cash, banded stacks of $100 bills, tight and organized the way I always kept them. And wrapped inside a folded pair of socks, my grandfather's Rolex. The sight of it almost knocked the wind out of me. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was what it meant. These were things she had to deliberately dig out of our life. She had to open that safe, knowing full well what she was taking. And she didn't hesitate. I slung the backpack over my shoulder and moved to the living room. Grabbed a duffel by the door and started stuffing anything else that looked familiar. My camera. My passport holder. Even the little leather wallet I'd misplaced last winter. Then I went into the kitchen. Evan stood by the far wall, next to the fridge, eyes wide. His arms were half raised like he thought I was going to lunge at him. He opened his mouth, probably to talk, but I cut him off. "Sit down, dog." He blinked. "What? You heard me. He slowly pulled out a chair and dropped into it like it had been waiting for him. I looked around the kitchen. Clean countertops, a wine bottle half opened, 2 glasses. One was smeared with lipstick. Hers. I spotted 2 phones on the table, hers and his. I picked them both up and slid them into my jacket pocket. He flinched when I touched his. She needs that, he muttered. I didn't even look at him. No, she doesn't. I went through the cabinets quickly, pulled open drawers, checked behind things. Nothing else of mine jumped out, but I wasn't leaving anything to chance. When I stepped back into the bedroom, Rachel was still on the bed. She hadn't moved. Her hands were balled into fists against her legs, her eyes red but dry. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked defeated, like someone who had just watched a movie play out the way she thought it never would. I stood there for a second, not because I had anything left to say, just to see if she did. She didn't. I turned and walked to the front door. Tyler was still there, arms folded, expression stone cold. He didn't say anything either, just stepped aside. We left without another word. No shouting, no begging, no dramatic apologies or excuses. Just me, my stuff, and the silence they earned. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I left them in that rented apartment, with nothing but half a bottle of wine, a cheap couch, and the crumbs of a life they thought they could build from stolen pieces. When I landed back in the States, it was pouring rain. The kind that comes down sideways and soaks your jeans before you get to your car. I didn't care. I was back, and more importantly, I had everything I needed. The next morning, I met with Marlon, my lawyer. We went over every single document again, passport scans, the theft reported police report. I gave him the new footage Tyler had helped me obtain. The timeline was complete. The file was ironclad. He filed the divorce papers immediately. He attached everything, photos, financial records, even the list of missing items with notations showing what I recovered. The theft report alone was over 30 pages long. We filed under abandonment, theft, and marital fraud. A few days passed. Then a week. And then she came back. I don't know what she was thinking. Maybe she thought I wouldn't follow through. Maybe she thought she could play the victim card and walk away with her half. Maybe Evan had enough of her and told her to go home. I don't know. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the moment she stepped foot back in Chicago, TSA flagged her passport. She didn't even make it to baggage claim. She was taken in by airport police and held until local authorities arrived. They read her the warrant. Theft, fraud, property concealment. She had no idea. I got the call from Tyler. He kept it simple, like always. She's in custody. I didn't feel much. Just a sort of heavy calm. Like setting down a load you didn't realize you were carrying for weeks. The trial was quicker than expected. My lawyer made sure everything was in place. The prosecutor didn't waste time. They presented my reports, the stolen items list, photos of what was recovered from the apartment in Paris, and the financial trail. Also, all transaction statements for the cards where she managed to withdraw money. Rachel sat at the defense table in a gray jumpsuit, arms folded, hair tied back like it used to be when she cleaned around the house. No makeup, no fake smile, just a face that looked tired and smaller than I remembered. She tried to argue it was all misunderstanding, said it was marital property, that we were still legally married when she left, and so she couldn't have stolen anything. But the judge wasn't buying it. No income, no job history in the last 3 years, no proof that she paid for a single thing she took. The jewelry? Bought with my bonuses. The electronics? Receipts in my name. The gold coins and Rolex? Inherited, documented, registered. The judge asked her what she had contributed to any of it. She went quiet. The trial didn't drag. The evidence did most of the talking. When it came time for sentencing, the court offered me the chance to withdraw the theft charges in exchange for a no-contest divorce settlement. I declined. I wasn't after vengeance, but I sure as hell wasn't going to give her a clean exit. So the court handed down the sentence. Fraud, theft over $10,000, and obstruction of property recovery. 18 months, minimum security. She gasped. Actually gasped. Like she thought the court was bluffing. That's when she snapped. Standing up at the table, hands trembling, she shouted across the room, "You're pathetic. I never loved you. Not one damn day." The room went quiet. Even the court clerk stopped typing. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, calm and steady, and said, "Sit down and think about your behavior." Her face twisted, like she wanted to keep yelling but couldn't come up with anything else to say. The bailiff guided her out. She didn't resist, just walked stiffly with her jaw clenched. Evan never showed. I asked around, quietly. Turns out he stayed in Paris. Never bought a return ticket. Maybe he got cold feet. Maybe he realized she was more baggage than he signed up for. Maybe he just didn't care. Either way, he left her to deal with the wreckage on her own. After the hearing, I stepped out of the courthouse into a windy afternoon. The sky was gray, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not happy. Just done. No message. No looking back. No lingering guilt. Just the road in front of me and the knowledge that I'd stood up, did what needed doing, and finished what she started. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was jail time justified in this case, or would divorce have been enough? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.